All right, so open Eclipse. So everything we've been doing so far, like there's a ton of stuff we could do, but everything we've been doing so far has been in one window, right? So we have this single, if you remember, we look at our files here, remember we had 3 packages. We had a common, where we had kind of our just kind of general classes. We had resources, which is where all of our images are. And then we have views, which is where our particular code is, okay? So let me close all this other stuff. Okay, so I'll open up my view. And you notice in views, so far I just have one view. All right, so I can click play. And you see we have our view on the left. We kind of have our burrito components. And on the right I have my customer list. Okay, so that's pretty cool, right? And then when we left off, we had started to do things like this, right? We had file, exit, so we'd actually close our program. It even came up with a neat little, are you sure you want to exit? And it would only exit if we clicked OK, right? So that's OK. That's cool. We also had these other guys, right? So we were just kind of showing how to structure menus. OK, so this was, remember, the whole form, like at the very top, this whole bar is called a J menu, I believe. Let's go back to the designer just to make sure. Lots of parsing happening right now. All right, so remember they're all the way down at the bottom. Okay, so J menu bar. Okay, so the J menu bar is my awesome GUI. It has J menus. Okay, so these kind of pop-up things are called J menus, and then J menu item is what I actually click on, kind of like the button inside the menu. All right, we can have menus inside of menus, right? So this whole thing is a menu, but then I have a menu inside of it. Okay, so we can see that structure. If I click on it, it'll kind of take me. See, I have the menu bar. Then I have menus inside of there. Inside of this menu, I have more menus that have within them menu items. Okay, so in these menu in these menus, the under the edit, remember I have these checkboxes, so I can actually check that, and I can kind of select options that way if you happen to want to do something like that. Or you can do radio buttons even, where you have a radio button group that only one of these would be selected. Okay, you may not find a reason to do that in your program. You may. It's just kind of up to you and up to the particular application. So I'm going to show you as much as possible. That way you can kind of have as many tools in your tool belt, so to speak. Okay, the last thing that we did at the end of the day on Wednesday is we did this J pop-up menu. Okay, so remember, what was the J pop-up menu? When did that kind of come into play? Anyone remember?
I'm going to say special instructions.
Okay, so is there say special instructions somewhere? All right, so where the J menu or where the pop-up menu came up is on my right-click menu. Okay, so I can right-click now anywhere inside this frame, you know, and I click, you know, I just happen to add a menu item called paste. Okay, I also have a right-click menu, a pop-up menu, J pop-up menu, that's assigned to this text box right here. So you can see I have a different action that I can select, a different button that I can select. Okay. So again, they'll kind of, what you'll notice is when I add a pop-up menu, we'll kind of put it in the top left corner of the component that you added it to. So I can have pop-up menus that are different depending on which component I happen to be hovered over. Right. So I may want to have a different list of copy and paste commands for this guy versus this guy. Okay, so that's pretty cool. If you want to add something, you just click on it, and then you can come over. You can add J menu item, and where you see that red bar, if I clicked right here, it would put it above the do something. Here it would do it below. So you can always come back and rearrange your stuff. All right, so let's say that maybe I actually want to do something with this. So I have paste. I could do this in the edit menu. Well, let's do it up here because this is kind of the typical place. A lot of times what we'll have is we'll have a menu that says something like this, help. All right, and then in there I might have a J menu item that says about. Okay, how many of you guys have ever clicked on something like this, about? Or maybe it's even like about us or about this program. We'll just stick with about. Okay, so I've got my menu item about, and it is a field, so it's an instance variable. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to. Okay, so what typically happens when you click that about button? Yeah, it will bring up typically a different window, and it doesn't really let you do much, but it just kind of says a little bit about the program. Okay, so in order for us to do this, we need to first create a whole new window. Okay, and so who remembers what class this whole window was at the very, very bottom? It's a JFrame. Okay, so for this this next pop-up, we actually want to do a JDialog. Okay, so what I can do, I'm going to come back over to my source, and I'm going to click on my views. Okay, so I have to click here to tell I'm going to create a new file. I have to click on the views first to basically tell it where to put that file. I want to put it in the views package. Okay, so now I'm going to come back up here where I created the JFrame, click swing, and then instead of JFrame, click JDialog. Okay, we'll give it a name. We'll call it about. Okay, so I can say finish, and you can see it's going to create this whole new frame. And you'll see that it actually has some stuff in there already. You can see it kind of has, you see cancel, okay. So if I go ahead, I can actually click in this program. Okay, so remember when we were in first WindowBuilder GUI, we press play, it would bring up our window. Well, this can work almost just the same. If I'm over here, I hit play, it's going to bring up my dialog. Okay, so this has the ability to kind of stand on its own, but it also has the ability to be launched from a frame. Okay, and you can launch frames from frames, but we don't want to do that. Where'd it go? There it is. Okay, so something I do want you to notice here. There it is. These look a little different, huh? Do these look different to you?
Okay.
The buttons are different, right? So remember the whole thing with the look and feel? So you have to be careful. When I create a new window, sometimes it will default back to kind of a generic style. So basically what we need to do is update this look and feel as well so it matches with, essentially we always want to, I think the most professional thing to do is always make it match with the system. Okay, so if I click over here on my About Us, you'll see it's on system. So let's go ahead and let's make sure that my preferences are set right. So if you remember, we go down the WindowBuilder, swing look and feel. You can see it apply chosen look and feel in main. So that's set. So a lot of times all I need to do is go and change it to something else. Okay, so I'll save it and play it. Okay, and then change it to back to what it should be. Okay, so now you see it has the look and feel of a Windows as opposed to that kind of weird Java thing. Okay, so they look the same. So just make sure, right? Because if you pop up a different window and all of a sudden it has different buttons, it's just going to feel very like unprofessional, right? All right, so what I want to do essentially here is I want to, in my About Us, I just want to kind of add some text out there. All right, so maybe we'll add something. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a J area. I could do this a number of ways. I could add a few labels that just say, hey, like author, you know, version 1.0, whatever it is. I'm going to do a J text area because it's a little bit easier to work with. So let's see, J text area. Okay, so I'll just let me change it to group layout first. So group layout, and now J text area. So I'm just going to put it in there. I'm going to make it pretty much the whole. Okay. So I can actually type my text in right here if I want. So let's say author CS225 students. What else do we want? Didn't mean to hit enter. Okay, so CS225 students, version 1.0, right? Maybe we have like a release date, April 17th, 2015. Okay. We have something like that. So if I play it now, I kind of have the information, but obviously I don't want it to be editable, right? I don't want them to be able to come and change my stuff. So at this point, what I would want to do is I want to essentially disable this control. So it will actually hopefully just kind of blend into the back. So if I come over on the control, so first I just can say editable false, okay? So you can see now they can kind of select it and copy stuff from it if they wanted, but they can't change it, right? I can't change it. You can say disabled as well if you want, and that will kind of gray the text out. I probably don't want that either. Probably what I'm going to want to do is keep it enabled because I like the text being black, but I might want to see if I can change the color. Okay, so maybe, so here we go, system colors. Maybe I'll just say, basically I want it to match whatever the background is. So not really sure which one of these. Scroll bar maybe? Nope. Probably, is there one that's just like system, caption, desktop, menu? This is probably it right here, menu. Okay, perfect. So now it essentially looks like it's just a little bit of text, right? I can probably copy it using Control-C if I wanted, but I can't really do anything else with it. Okay, so this is typically what I'll do if I'm creating like an About Us, and I might even put some images in here. We won't go that far today, but you might put some simple images and some stuff like that. But the trick is you want it, typically if you have uneditable text, you can use something like a text area, but you want it to blend in, right? If they can't actually change the content, you want that whole control to blend into the background so they can't really see it. Okay, right now these buttons don't do anything. The X does, however. So what I would probably even do, you can, let's see if there's a handler on these. There might already be one. An event handler. We could say action performed. Don't know if this is what I want. System.exit. This will exit the whole thing, which is probably not what I want. Dot close. Actually, I haven't closed the dialog in a while. There's a command where you can dispose or something like that. For now, let's just do this the easy way, since we kind of forget how to do this. By we, I mean me. I'm just going to delete these. Okay, I don't need them. That pops up. I can just click X. Okay. I probably want to add something up here. Okay, so I want again, anytime I have a window popping up, I want it to feel like it belonged to the window that brought it up, right? So I want to change all the icons. For instance, let me change the icon to say, I'll do the title, so I'll say Potle About or something like that. I can just make it About. Okay, so now I'll have a title that makes sense. And if we go to icon image, I'll go ahead and add my monkey icon because that's what I had otherwise. So it kind of looks like it belongs. Okay, so now we come to the part of how do I actually call this? How do I actually bring this up? So the way I do it is let me go back to the calling window, and I'm just going to come up to my help, about. I'm going to right click and add an event handler. Okay, so action performed. Again, let me copy, let me cut it and move it down to my events. Okay, I should comment all this stuff, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to. But I would recommend it. It's a little easier to work with. Okay, so now that I have this, I come to this idea of how do I actually launch this window. It's pretty simple. Basically, what I need to do is I need to create a new instance of my new window, and I do this just like I would with any other object. Okay, so I say about, and I would just call it about equals new about. Okay, so I've created it, And well, there's one thing I'm going to do. I'm going to skip it. But then the last thing I need to do is simply say about dot, I think, set visible. Okay. So if I hit play, I come up here and I have about, and it comes up. Okay. Now there's one issue. Typically, when I open up a window, what happens to the window behind it? You can't click it, okay? But you can see now I can click it, okay? So the idea is that normally if you bring up a window, you're setting some options or something so that when you're done, it's going to change something behind the scenes, okay? So typically what happens is it just, I can't click this, okay? So this idea is called modal, okay? There's this phrase called modal. And how I can recreate this is I say, just with one more line of code, I say about dot set modal, okay, and then I say true. So if I say this, what's going to happen now when I click help about, I have this window behind me, and you can see I can no longer interact with that window until I close this. Okay, then I can interact, I can do whatever I want. But until then, I'm stuck. Okay, so don't forget to do that. It's typically what you want to do. So that way you're basically forcing the user to deal with that window that they just chose to bring up. Okay, otherwise they may get confused. They may start getting all these windows popped up. It can just cause some problems. All right, so that is the basically how to create, kind of load up a window. Anyone have any questions about that? Okay, bless you. It's pretty straightforward actually. So then it's just up to you how you want to design this. Okay, do you want to put tabs on it? Do you want to put what kind of components, and so on and so forth. All right, so with remaining time, I just kind of want to go through a number of, just a few more controls that you might want to use at some point. So let's go ahead, and these won't necessarily have a whole lot of reason to be in our program, but just for the sake of demonstration, we're going to kind of put them in there. All right, so the first one I want to do is let's work with maybe a progress bar. Okay, so progress bars are actually pretty cool. Let me make this a little bit smaller actually. So take the scroller and bring it up here. Oh no. Let's try that again. Okay, I'm going to bring it up. All right. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to add in a JProgressBar. Okay, so these are pretty cool. I like to use these sometimes. So what this does is it will give the user basically some tangible feedback to what's going on. Okay, so I have a program that it'll basically create like an animation for you by creating individual frames. So think of that basketball thing that we did, right? It's printing out like all these images, like maybe 50 of them, maybe more, depending on how you ran your simulation. So what my program does is it basically figures out how many images it's going to need to draw, and then as it's drawing them, right, let's say there's 100, it moves this slider up from 0 to 100%, so that you kind of have some visual feedback of how your program is progressing, right? It basically lets the user know that, hey, this is going to take a while. This may take like even, some of my simulations, they'll take a few minutes, maybe even, dozens of minutes, depending on how many images you're outputting. But it gives the user some feedback to say, hey, the program's not just stuck, it's not just hanging, it's actually doing something. So any type of progress indicator that you can put in your program is always a good idea, because it tells your users, it allows them to have some patience, right? Okay, so if I just play it, there's basically just kind of this empty bar here, okay? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say something like this, okay? So every time I make an order, right, so I click an order, it does something. Let's just imagine that maybe I have an employee working here, okay? Every order they make, will kind of contribute to how many orders they need for the day. So let's say I have to do 10 orders today. So, I mean, not working very long, right? But let's go into the back end. So let's make sure we want to make this a instance variable. So I'll call it like PB for progress bar and then orders. Okay. So I can set a few things up right here. I can say 0, maybe my max is 10. String paint. Okay, so what this is going to do, notice when I click it or unclick it, it's basically adding the percentage in there. Okay. So, and then I can set the value to whatever I want as a default, and you'll see that it will kind of fill up that bar for me a little bit. So I'm going to start at 0. Okay. Number of burritos you have served, right? So we'll put a little tooltip in there. All right, so let's go to my action handler for this. So we already have action performed. And what I'm going to do in here now, so you can see we've been kind of like our playground out here. We've been doing a lot of stuff. So let's work on this progress bar. Okay, so it's pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say pb.orders, I think it was. Okay. So I've already set the min and max to what range I wanted it to go from. And then I'll just simply say every time I click on order, I'm going to increase my value. Okay, so dot set value, okay? And I want it to be whatever the value was in there plus 1, because I've just done one more order. Okay, so I simply say pb orders dot get value plus 1. Okay. So now when I come, all right, so I'll click order, 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 so you can see it's going up till eventually it gets to 100. Okay. So what was nice, right, was I just told it how many values it was going to take. 10, right? The min value was 0, the max was 10, and then I tell it how many values I've done. And it basically does the math to say, hey, 5 values, that's really 50% of my range from 0 to 10. Right, so let's say we changed it now to something like, let's go back to our designer, and we'll click on our progress bar, and we'll say, how about 30? Okay, so now we have from 0 to 30. Okay, so one order would be how much percent? What? Something around 3, right? So you can see, I don't know if you can see that from back here or not, but it's only going up by about 3%, 3 to 4%, until it gets up there. Okay, so we can also change a few things. The color. Okay, so something we might want to do is say, we might want to do something like this. Okay, if pb orders dot get value. Okay, I'm going to reset the maximum back to 10. So 10. You can do that programmatically too by just saying set maximum. There it does right there. Okay, so maybe I want to show kind of some colors. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll say, hey, if the value is greater than or equal to the maximum value that I have set, then what I want to do is set the color of orders. You can set, I think it's foreground color to red. Okay, so that's basically going to tell me to stop. So again, if I click it 10 times, eventually it'll kind of tell me, hey, go ahead and stop now. So maybe I want to add some more feedback, right? So if, else if, the order is, let's say, greater than 50. Okay, so basically I'll say something like this, maybe whatever halfway is. So the max minus the min get min, and then divided by 2. Okay, so that's should give me 50 in this case. Then what I want to do is set orders to dot set foreground to dot yellow. So let's do yellow. Okay, else we'll just set it to green to kind of say, all right, go ahead. So now you'll see that it starts off blue, but as soon as I run it through that first button, you can see it goes red, then it goes yellow, and it goes, green, yellow, and red. Okay. You can change the text color too. I can't remember if it is, let's see. So it starts off as blue, then it kind of changes it, you can see. Now that's blue the whole time. PB orders dot set background. Let's try that. I can't remember how to set the text color, but you can do it pretty easily. Because, depending on what kind of contrast you have, the yellow, I would obviously want the text to be black so you can read it more easily. So that's easy. We could do it, we could Google it and figure it out, but let's not. Okay, so 2 more controls that I think you might like to use are let's see, so we have the slider and the spinner. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of put them both out there. We'll put a slider out here. Okay, and then I'm going to put a spinner. Just put it out here. Okay, so the way this works is a slider simply allows me to slide to some range of values. Okay, so I could have something over here like slow, medium, fast, right? And then you could basically pick somewhere along this scale between slow, medium, and fast. Okay. The spinner is basically just for numbers, for integers, typically, right? And so you can just click up and down if you want to kind of keep users clicking certain values up. Maybe they just typically want to increment their number by 1 or decrement by 1. Maybe think of it like when you're ordering a shirt online, right? You have like up and down. Hey, let me add 2 of those to my cart instead of just 1, and let me go back down to 0. Okay, so you may do something like that. So the way that we interact with these, so I'll give this a name. So SPN. I don't really have any purpose for this in our control, so I'm just going to call it SPN spin. I'll call this one slider. What do you want me to call it? David?
Okay.
Jimmy?
Jimmy Francoin, and I don't care.
I'm going to do this just for Montreal because he picks bad variable names. But we don't have a reason for the slider, so we'll call it slider Jimmy in honor of Montel's variable names. All right, so here we are. We can move these around. Okay, so the way that I get the value from this is get value. Okay, it's as simple as that. I can basically come into my source. Well, right here I can actually kind of set a range on my slider. So notice I have a min and a max. So right now I'm saying, all right, the minimum value that the slider can have if it's all the way on the left is 0. The maximum value that it can have if it's all the way on the right is 100. All right, so then I can go ahead and add some kind of tick marks to let you know. If I say paint labels, notice that it'll actually start to put some stuff on there if I actually tell it, right? So my major tick, let's say that between 0 and 100, maybe every 10, okay? So you can see as soon as I kind of give it a value to say, hey, every 10, then it'll actually start to draw, okay? So if I unclick or click this, it's going to draw those. So here I have every 10 values, so you can kind of slide it around there, okay? And then inside of that, what I can also do is I can do I want to paint the ticks on there as well, or just the numbers? Okay. Do I want to show minor ticks? Okay, so maybe I put a 5 in there, and that way it'll kind of draw like even smaller kind of minor tick lines in there, so you can kind of get an idea. Okay, so something I might typically do here is, notice how I can slide this anywhere? Well, right here, what is this exact value? What do you guys think? 7. Who knows? It's somewhere in between 5 and 10, right? According to our tick marks. There's a few different things that we can do. We can either click this button down here. It says snap to ticks. Okay, and that way, no matter where we leave it, it's going to snap to, notice how I let go, kind of snaps to one of these guys, right? But what's the problem with that? You win some. It's not very precise, right? As long as I only needed the precision of every 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, then it's great. But if I actually did want all that precision and I wanted to know what was my actual value, I would need some other indicator, okay? So you might even use our spinner over here, okay? So what I would do is if I click on this, what I would do is I want to say, all right, add event handler. Notice there's no action, but there's something called, typically you can just look through these and kind of figure out which one you might need. Which one of these do you think I might use? So what I want it to do is whenever I move this slider, I want to catch that action. Change, right? So when I change the slider, let me do something. Okay, so I'll add this handler, state changed. Okay, let me make sure that my variable is an instance variable. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to move my slider all the way down. Let's create events. Okay, so in there, what I want to do now is I want to find my spinner, which was spin, spn, spin, which is also not yet instance variable. Okay, so now I can work with it. Okay, so what I want to do here is I just basically want to do something to keep these in sync. So I say for the spinner, I want to set its value whenever I change the slider. Let me set the value of the spinner to whatever the value of Jimmy is. Okay? So now we have really good control, right? I can get anywhere in there. Now you know that that's an 8. Okay? So that's an 8, so it's going to slide everywhere in there. Okay? However, now it's kind of out of sync, right? So typically, if you're trying to sync these in, right, I need to have a handler for this control, the slider, and I need to have a handler for my spinner. So now I'm going to go back to the spinner. I'm going to right-click it, and I'm going to add an event handler. And it looks like change is going to be the one here as well. So I'll add this guy, and I'm basically going to come down and do the exact same thing. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. This time, it's just going to be the opposite, right? So the slider is going to take on the value of the spinner. Set value. Okay, I think I just need to cast this in this case to an integer, and hopefully this will work. Yeah, so you can see we can kind of work with it this way. Okay, so if I go up, that's going to cause a problem, right? If I go all the way down, this causes a problem. So the last thing I may want to do is come back to my designer. This is the easiest way to do it, and just click on the model, I think. And this will basically tell me what kind of numbers do I want. Okay? Do I want integers? Do I want doubles, floats? So I can have anything in my spinner. By default, it's integer. And then I can say, hey, initial value is whatever. Let's just say 0. Actually, let's say 50, because that's what this guy is starting out to, right? So we always want to make sure they start off synced up. 50, and then I can say, hey, minimum is 0, max is 100. This way, I can never get these guys out of sync. Okay, so I can go all the way up to 100, but I can't get it. If I try to write a value in, which is okay, it basically is not going to keep it. As soon as I click off, it's going to set it back to the bounds, right? So -2. If I click on something else, it's going to take me away. Okay, so these guys are now in sync. If I go back to the model, I can change the size too. Maybe I want this to kind of go up by 5. So I can kind of step through a little bit faster. But then I can always change this to whatever I want. Okay, so now it is 63, and I'm going to go up 63, 68, 73 this time. Okay. Okay, so at this point, let's see, let's do one more. So there's one more. Let's do this toggle button. So the toggle button is kind of like an on-off. So maybe I say off on here. Okay, so I'll just say TGL state or something like that. So what's the state of my system? I'll make it public. So notice when I click on this button, it kind of doesn't change the look, but when I click on this one, notice how it stays kind of pressed down, like it stays blue. Here it'll go blue when I press it down, but when I release it, it changes back. Okay, so this one has basically like an on and off state. That's kind of hard to see, right? So typically what I would want to do is I would actually want to change this text. Okay, so let me add a handler here. So event handler action action performed. So I'll grab my toggle state, and this way I can say something like this. So I say if toggle state dot get here we go is selected. Okay, so if it's selected, then let's say that toggle state dot set text is probably on. Okay, and maybe we even change the color of it. Right, so we'll say toggle state dot set foreground, I think it is, to color dot red. Okay, so otherwise, if it's not selected, then what I want to do is simply change it back to off, and then change the color to black. Okay, so it's going to start off the off state. I press on. Now it gives me a really nice kind of visual indicator of what's going on. It turns red. I press it again, off. Okay, so on, off, on, off, on. Okay. So at this point, you know, we've got about, what, 10, 12, 13 more minutes. Is there any other particular controls you guys, I mean, we went through a lot. I've actually never used some of these ones. Well, I don't know if I've used the slider, honestly. I think this is the first time I've used the slider. I've used all the rest. I've never done the pop-up menus. I've never done the J combo box menu items and the J checkbox menu items. Yeah, Montreal?
Is it, so like, for touchscreens, will it automatically register?
What do you mean?
Like it touches? Will it touches automatically register? Like if you have a Windows
For a
tablet or
click?
something? What are you talking about?
You know, I've never tried it on a touchscreen. It should. I think it's just a click.
Touchscreens are just clicks, so.
Okay. Yeah, just, you know, because there's different types of.
Do you have a touchscreen or you're?
Yeah, it all just works.
It's throwing the same events and stuff. Yeah, so I guess when you touch, it's a good question. When you touch on your screen, it typically just acts as a left
Like,
click.
yeah, 98% of the time the OS just treats it like a click. So it's just.
It's a good question, though. So, are there any other questions? Are there any other controls you want to see? Maybe clarifications of anything we've done?
What's the table?
I don't know. You want to find out? Table. He asked about the table. I've never used the table. So there's a JTable. Well, there it is. Does that answer your question? It's a nice square. Let's see what options we have.
The table is pretty much just like a list with a bunch of columns.
Okay, so look, if we go into the model, we can insert some columns and insert some rows in that column. So I don't know, let's insert another column. Okay, so here we have a.
It's down at the bottom.
Oh, thanks. Good variable names.
Oh.
You know where I'm going with this?
Okay. I don't want to know what it does anymore.
Let's see. How did I get that editable? Bad variable names. Let's see. And let's say we'll put in here button submit radio button hot sauce.
Mine is submit, actually.
David.
Actually, it is submit.
David Hassenhoff was a variable I saw in someone's program, not to be confused with David Hasselhoff. Spinner, the spinner.
Actually, I would actually call that R&B fire, to be honest. That's what I would call it.
R&B fire.
R&B fire.
Okay, so let's see. I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. So we now have kind of just like a table. Cool. What else can we do? Let's go back to our model. I think we've added columns. Can I add a row? Oh, there we go, row.
Can you make animations?
What's that?
Can you make animations? Like animate?
Yeah.
Does Java support GIFs?
I think so. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to do animations, we haven't really talked a whole lot about that. There's definitely ways to do it. You would use like a with a special type of window. We won't be able to do it in the context of the remaining time. Tables crash your window builder.
Is there like a better version of WindowBuilder? Less bugs?
Oh, less bugs. So a lot of people use NetBeans, and one of the reasons NetBeans has had like GUI building in like for a long, long time. So WindowBuilder they just added into Eclipse recently. So you might try NetBeans. That might be more stable. I would guess it would be, but I haven't used NetBeans in a long, long time. So probably not for Eclipse, because this is the one they chose to add, like just now, right? It's good in what it can do, but it does have some shortcomings as we crash our program right here. It does have some shortcomings. Let's see if we can. I think so the JApplet can start to do stuff with animation, and I've not, to be honest, I haven't done a whole lot of animation inside of a GUI. I mostly do like I'll create images and then I'll output those images so you can look at them anywhere.